All right, so I'm going to stand over here in the middle just to drive the guys in the back of the cameras nuts because they want me in the light. So that's my nature. Thanks for coming. Those people who came back again, I appreciate it. I try not to repeat things. But some things about photography are the same. Whether it's a critter or it's a landscape, it's a plane. The one thing that's in common with all of them is a thing called light. As soon as you start grasping the facts of light, then you start moving forward in your photography. And here's the deal. It doesn't come overnight. People expect, and that can understand, results instantly. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't. It takes time. Now when it comes to landscape photography, which I'm going to talk about this afternoon, be point blank honest with you, landscape photography for me at this point is like a no-brainer. Okay? I don't really even think about it. It's, to me, I just go out and go click and it's a done deal. Now I say done deal and I'll explain it. When I go click, whether I have to do a little finishing in post or not, that's still done when I go click in the camera. I just have to actually follow through with it later on. Now, it wasn't always that way. It wasn't I could just walk up to the scene, I knew where I wanted to stand, what focal length and everything else, and just go boom and keep on walking. How many people here have joined us on our DLD, Digital Landscape Workshop series? Anybody here? So you're all virgins, I like that, okay? So I can all brainwash you at the same time. Well, those people who shot with me, they would get frustrated. I mean, McNally's written about it in his books and his website, how he'll stand up next to me often, he'll step on my subject, and then he'll go, oh, okay. He hadn't seen what I was shooting. It didn't always work that way. So what happened? What changed that all of a sudden I can just go out and make landscape shots happen with really kind of a no effort involved? I'm trying to explain that in the next 2 hours, okay? The problem is I won't be successful. You have to understand that from the get-go. Landscape photography is first an expression of one photography, writing with light, okay? The next thing, and here's the thing the guys have a really hard time with, landscape photography is an expression of the heart, okay? It's not histograms, okay? It's not instruction manuals. It's actually taking a piece of who you are and putting it in that landscape to share with others. That's the hard part about landscape photography that so many people have issues with, okay? Is separating yourself with, well, I read this article and he said to do this, and you get there and it don't work, okay? Because that writer's not you. And you think about it, okay, and really think about it. This means I really probably drive my truck too much and I think too much. What it is when you go click, that really is a summation of everything you experienced to that moment in your life. Not photographic career, in your life, okay? Here's an example, sunsets. Everybody here have experienced a sunset in your life sometime? Right? All those experiences in that sunset, those are your own personal experiences, right? But when you see someone else's sunset, don't think for a moment they don't come crashing forward and even subconsciously start to affect the way you look at someone else's sunset. That's the personal experience we bring to our photography. You have to, at some point, somehow tap into that to make landscape photography a no-brainer, okay? So let me see if I can help you get to that point. Now, landscape photography for myself has always been an extension of my wildlife work. There's no way when you're out there, like in the Black Hills of South Dakota, or on a boat out in the Cook Inlet of Alaska, even up in the Yukon, you cannot help but turn from that critter and see the wonders that are around you. Now, one thing that has always kind of separated myself from others when it comes to wildlife photography is I'm not an eyeball photographer. I've always taken a photograph of the world around that subject. It's part of the stage that tells the story. It makes the actual photographing the critter more challenging. You might say, why? Because it's small in the frame. But using all the techniques to make that little thing visually pop out and smack you between the eyes, not easy to do. So that whole process, mental process of making that story come through, took me into landscape photography. Now, when I started out back in back in '78, I said, you know what, I'm gonna be a landscape photographer. This is the days of the 4x5, Arizona Highway magazine. Did a little research and I realized landscape photographers tend to eat a lot of hot dogs and beans. Didn't have a family or a house. I'm like, no, that's not a whole lot of security. So that's what made me become a wildlife photographer. Much more security there. But it was that passion, though, for being out there and seeing things. You know, it's minus 20. I'm pulling out the 200 or 400, and I'm hand-holding a shot, photograph this tree in the backcountry of Yellowstone. Why? There was no one else there. It's not many people go there. It's cold. It's hard work. I love it. So that is the process, bringing back that morning fog in the coastal redwoods of California, and bringing back, and that fog, you know, is photographically is great, kind of ethereal kind of thing, but that fog is why those redwoods live there. It's very, in fact, a biological photograph. So how does this all start? Where do you begin this landscape thing? And that's where I found is the biggest challenge for most people out there shooting landscape work. Now, a lot of landscape photographers, this is how they shoot. They go, and they're like in this incredible panic, as if the rock's going to go somewhere. And I'm like, you know that rock's been there for 1 billion years? You know, it will last the morning. And they kind of look, people look at me like, what does that mean? When you're out there shooting, at least for myself, how many people are fly fishermen? Anybody fly fishermen in here? Oh, come on, that's a great state. We got a couple back there. Well, let me tell you a little bit. Fly fishermen, right? Fly fishermen, they go up to the stream they're about to fish, right? And before they even cast a shadow on the water, before they do anything else, they stop. At least they're really good at this, okay? And they just watch the life go by. And they watch to see where that fish is. And then they watch to see what that fish is doing. Then they get out their fly, they tie it on there. And without casting any shadow, okay, they very carefully get to a place where that very first cast, they go out there, and if that cast is done correctly, and they've done just a simple visual homework, they'll catch the fish the first time. Because after that, it's disturbed, okay? It makes it more of a challenge. Landscape photography is kind of that same scenario. You have to kind of go out there. And people who watch me, they say, you kind of stand a lot. You know, it's like, yeah, there it is, but it's not there. One thing I say a lot is, when you do a landscape photograph, what I think is so important is, you want to take a photograph saying, I was here. You want to take a photograph saying, you need to be here. That's a really important difference, okay? So, in this process, the photographic puzzle, how do you sit there and make that photograph come alive? Now, as I mentioned earlier this morning, when it comes to arranging the elements in the viewfinder, okay, I do it right then. I do not crop in post, okay? It's not my stick. What you're going to see is, and this is a common question, is what are you thinking when you take the picture? A lot of things go on in there, some of them you don't want to know about. To answer the question, though, when it comes to that landscape, that photograph, landscape, wildlife, critter, person, whatever it is, I sit there and I say, what is that subject? What is the subject? That's so important. Because from there I start doing the dance. I start looking at what pieces of that photograph in the viewfinder do I need to make sure I add to this photograph that talks about the subject. Then I say, what elements in that frame do I want to make sure I exclude so they don't take the eye away from the subject? At the same time, I think about what's the very first thing the mind's eye goes to in any photograph, any painting, anything like that that's visual? It's light and bright. First thing, you cannot help yourself from that, whether you're from this side of the planet or the other side. We're all wired the same way. The second thing the mind's eye grabs onto is sharpness. Okay? Sharpness is really important. I mean, how many people keep pictures that are out of focus? Right? So then there's things like there's color, the next thing the mind's eye grabs onto. And then there's texture. And the way the mind's eye work, it's the same for all of us. The thing is, you have to kind of think about all these different pieces, okay, in that viewfinder, and how they relate and come together or how they don't. And it's that assembly of those items, okay, in this thing we call visual communication that goes about finishing up and what? Taking that photograph and bringing it to life to the viewer of that photograph. And here's kind of the responsibility. We have to sit there and kind of realize that we're very fortunate in the fact that we can go out and see this, experience it, and come back with a picture. So it's not only our responsibility to bring back that photograph, then share it with others. So the whole process, if we were to sit there and look at it for a second, here's a scene. It was a beautiful, beautiful day in the Sierra. The snow came in that night, and this is Yosemite Valley. And whenever the snow hits, it's a special time. It's 4,000 feet, so it's not like it gets a ton of snow like my home, which will have 25 vertical feet of snow in January. But you know, that snow is magical. It makes the whole place change. So you get out there and you're the first one out there, means there's no foot tracks to deal with. You just have to deal with the experience. So let's divide this photograph up, okay, into pieces. And to me, it's really important. I kind of think of things kind of like in writing terms. So if you have a photograph, right, it's 100% is all within the borders there. How much of that is there going to be space that's going to tell the story, like in a paragraph? And how much space is being wasted? So if I took the same amount of words out of a paragraph, would anybody understood what I wrote? Same thing with a photograph. So the bottom half, bottom third, really ain't doing much. I mean, it wouldn't hold anybody's visual interest. What about the top? You know, okay, some wispy clouds and blue sky. So you put, you know, all that together, hey, you take out that centerpiece and it's still visually, okay, there ain't nothing really exciting there. But you ask yourself, what's the subject, okay? And color and light and texture and all those things, and you look at it mathematically, that really small part of the frame, but you sit there and you put it all together, and that itty bitty part, you can't help but zero in on. You visually cannot help but see it. So the rest of the pieces of that puzzle then, what are they? Well, this is El Cap. Okay, and if I were just to take a picture with of just El Cap and zoom in like 200 millimeters, this is probably 14 to 20 millimeters, somewhere in there. Okay, if I just zoom in to 200 and just got that face, is there kind of a cool vertical there? Sure. But what about that early morning? What about that first snow? What about the fact you're the first one out there? Would those parts of that story, if you want to tell them, be told in that vertical slice of that face? Okay, so part of the landscape photography is what the story do you want to tell? Now, how many people have heard that putting something dead center in the frame is like the last thing you should do when it comes to composition? Anybody heard that one? Where's the subject in this frame? You'll see that a lot in my photographs, all right? Dead center, and I have the proof. I mean, picture's gonna be on the screen, so it's not like I'm blowing windies here. But dead center is the strongest composition we have available to us. If. If, okay? And that's true for anything photographic. And that's if the rest of the elements in the frame support it. How many people know my good friend Joe McNally? You ever notice how many of his subjects are dead center? Okay, and he spends a lot of time and an incredible amount of skill with those flashes lighting them, so what? The subject can live dead center, okay? So don't let anybody tell you that dead center is a bad thing to do, okay? As soon as people make a rule like that, just go, okay? Seriously, because rules they're no fun. Think about the way the mind is gonna move around that frame, and then you be the architect and make that map for that mind to move around in that frame, okay? Again, the top and bottom really aren't doing much for that photograph. So that's 2/3 of the photograph, technically, negative space, doing nothing to talk about the subject. But now we start filling in that third, okay, or in fourths I should say. All of a sudden, what happens now? We have God beams up in the Alaska range, 7200 zoom, okay? Is there a defined subject in this? There's not like a person, a rock, or a critter, but the subject is really one of the main things we have in photography, and that's light. Form all those God beams coming down. Now that photograph, was that how I saw it? Well, what you see is what I saw on the viewfinder, but to bring out the drama in that highlight, you have two options, okay? Most people go to make the highlights brighter. Anybody knows what happens when we make highlights brighter? We lose detail, right? We go to what's called paper white. There's no white in that. It's a yellowish, okay, kind of look. This is probably about midnight up in Alaska range, all right? So if you start yanking on the highlights, they tend to break. As soon as they break, not only do you lose image quality, you lose the whole feel of those God beams. So if you want to make something lighter, the way that I do it at least, is I make things around it darker. Because by association, okay, instantly the mind says, you know, those clouds are that black, those must be really bright beams. And what else does that tell you when you see that dark black? Okay? When you see that dark, stormy sky up there, those God beams could be one of two things. Either the storm is coming or the storm is leaving. And most people think the storm is out of here. Okay? So a split grad filter, okay, here's my holder. Everybody goes, what holder I use for my split grad filter? Here it is. Okay? It's always with me and it works great. Okay? Split grad filter holder, that's it. Do I have to remember anything else? Just the filter. That's challenge enough for me. Okay? So think about just that one area in the frame. Okay? How can we sit there and make more happen with it? By taking that top and making it darker. So the way that I arrange the elements in a frame are always going to be thinking of, okay, what's the subject? I'll take questions at the end. I'm one of those guys who if I sit there and stop now, I'll be so railroaded, I'll never remember where I was. So I will get your questions. I see your hands, you're being patient. But the thing is, I'm going to ask myself what the subject is, and then I'm going to work around that. In this case, okay, it's one of the best things you can for learning your landscape photography. That's the landscape of a face. You take a face and you learn how to light it, either with straight light, diffuse light, bounce light, or flashlight. In this case, this is a simple SB 900 going through a easy box, okay? And this man, he was just an amazing guy. He fell asleep. I don't remember how old he was. He's older than dirt. And he's a Revolutionary Revolutionary War reenactor out of Washington. It's some San Juan Islands. And I said, can you do a seafarer? And he goes, it takes 20 minutes to get 5 feet to his car. And he gets on his slicker and he goes, how's this? And I go, with them eyebrows, we're just golden, okay? But look at the amount of frame that he's taking up versus the rest of the frame. But you can't help but see his face because of light. And what else? Look at what's light and bright in the frame, okay? That brings you right into everything. So that the subject, those eyes and eyebrows, are not even a 1% of the frame. But you can't help but see them. So landscape photography. It's not something you can literally do out your bedroom window. You do have to go out somewhere to do it, but it doesn't take too far to start experiencing it. So the first thing I'm going to kind of encourage you to do is turn on your blinkies or your highlight warnings, okay? Because in this scene here, okay, when those were turned on, the top of the frame, the top of that canopy up there, that last little bit was blinking like a son of a gun. It was just going black and white blinking, okay? And when it's blinking, what's it tell you about the light? Without knowing anything else, what's it tell you about the light? Anybody know?
Too bright.
Too bright. Let's go a little bit past too bright. Blown out highlights. Let's think about this though. How can we use this to our advantage? If it's blinking, what's it telling us about the light? I'm giving you a hint. It means you're beyond 5 stops of light, okay? When that thing starts blinking, okay, you're at 5.1 stops of light, okay? So the range from the shadows to highlight, more than 5 stops. How much more? If you don't know, ask yourself and then say, camera, how much more? Because you know the camera will tell you. Because you sit there and you dial in -1 the camera, you take a picture and it's still blinking, what's it telling you? Now we're on, okay? You dial in 4 stops and it's still blinking, what's it telling you? Now you start learning the range of light, okay? Because when you get to 9 stops of light, okay, what tools do we have to bring that all into one image? Okay, HDR, this is an HDR image, okay? As my friend Scott Kelly would say, I'm the master of realistic HDR. Stanford University has been for a number of years now. This would be year 5. It's been looking at this marvelous tool we have here embedded in us and how it talks to this incredible tool here. Something we take for granted because we use it every day. We don't really think about it. But when you're trying to master this thing for robotics, okay, they have to understand how it works. Well, with my vision, with your vision, you can look at a scene, you can see a spread of light about 14 stops, okay? And total sensitivity, they just changed it, is 22 stops. So not at one glance, but that total sensitivity from light to dark. It's an amazing tool from that aspect. And let's talk about color. I bet you I look pretty much like a normal color, but we know with these lights, if I took a picture, I wouldn't be that color. So the camera is kind of a cold-hearted bastard, doesn't know the stuff, okay? We do. So it's up to us to sit there and look at the photograph, okay? It's shot over early morning light. It's shot on overcast day. We know off the bat that it's going to have a bluish tendency. That's fine. That bluish tendency with green grass and green trees, that works just fine. But what if we don't have those kind of scenarios, okay, in making that photograph? What if we have the warmer colors? What are we going to do? How are you going to bring that back to the audience? How are you going to get them and look at your photograph and go, I got your heartstrings? As soon as you grab someone's heartstrings, you win. You win big time, okay? People will follow you anywhere. So here's Battery Point Lighthouse up in Northern California, all right? A lighthouse. What does a lighthouse have to have? Has to have a light, right? Because otherwise it's just a house. Does that logic make sense? People, I say that to people and they go, what? I'm like, a lighthouse, it has to have a beam of light. Now what's a beam of light from the lighthouse for in the real world, especially back in the day? It's for during those storms, right? When it's dark and waves are crashing, there's some poor guy out there in a sailboat, you know, where he shouldn't be. He doesn't want to run into rocks, and he wants to know where the harbor is. That's what a lighthouse is all about. Everybody with me so far? Okay. So the first scenario, for a lighthouse, okay, it has to be what? Dark, right? Is it dark in this photograph? What do you see lit up in the background? That big romantic sunset, okay? Lighthouse, sunset, cha-ching. People go, oh. And they, you know, that's the bottom line. You're grabbing romance. You're sucking into perceived ideas, okay? But here's the problem, that beam of light from the lighthouse. Has anybody ever gone out to photograph a beam from a lighthouse? Anybody? Because you know that light goes around and around and around, okay? So is there any way to physically capture that in one click? It's not even possible. Here's the other thing. People don't think this through. When does the light on a lighthouse normally come on? Is it nighttime? So where's that beam of light coming from? Photoshop. I invented the technique because there's no way that lighthouse is going to have a light beam at sunset. They don't turn on and you can't get it in one click. But without that beam of light, it's just a house, okay? So the whole process, okay, look at it without the beam, okay? That's the actual little glow from the thing. That's the best I could get with a single click, all right? And think of, you know, mathematically, how much of the frame is filled up with that beautiful little lighthouse at sunset? Not enough to get your attention. I mean, you got a diagonal line comes up, you've got light and bright, but it's gonna, you know, your eye is gonna go back to those clouds more than it is that lighthouse. I cannot, no matter what I do, suck you down that lighthouse unless I do what? And then what happens? Then the cloud's no more than a background. It's no more than atmosphere. It's no more than romance. Okay? So when it comes to, you know, I just love doing this. What can I say? I'm really a weak person. When it comes to this landscape thing, the only thing I'll ever add to a photograph is a beam of light. I don't have a problem kind of removing some things, but I don't bring in clouds. I don't do that kind of stuff. I'm going to sit there and look at what my subject is. And then I'm going to say, what can I say about the subject that will get your attention? And then I'm going to sit there and sculpt the world around that subject, okay, to make you part of that moment, and then use light to finish it off, okay? It's just, you know, this is one of the shots we did for a Photoshop World pre-con, and Trey was really good at just sitting there staring long enough and working. She was very uncomfortable hanging out that truck just the right angle to make that reflection happen in the mirror. So you start looking at your photograph, your landscapes, and start thinking about the subject, the pieces around it. You'd be surprised what all of a sudden you can start assembling, okay, in that viewfinder. Then take your clouds, shot over the Alaska range. This is an old D1 with an 80 to 400 zoom picture. I mean, it's an oldie. No problem. Made lots of large prints off this. And I should mention that when it comes to this landscape stuff for myself, I have a certain benchmark when it comes to image quality. In other words, how much I can get out of that file and take care of my clients, the ones that pay them the bill for this stuff. They don't want to hear me talking. They just want to see the pictures. And so everything has to be able to go to at least 24 by 30, okay, at the very minimum, without anything falling apart. That making, and this rock here, it's about the size of your fist, okay? I'm just down really close with the 1424, shooting at 14, making it look large, okay? And I did that because I like the rock. Now, when I went up there, was it looking like that? No. First thing I did is, you notice the very bottom right corner, you see little bubbles? I don't like dry rocks. Dry rocks suck, okay? So I always, if I'm gonna go out near a creek, I have a bucket with me, okay? And the rocks at the edge of the creek, I'm gonna get them all wet. Because shiny rocks are really sweet, really nice. Dry rocks suck, okay? So the first thing is I took that rock and I got it wet to see what happened. Then what? I took a flash, because it's cold, it's icy, and that's what makes that blue cast. But I took a flash, you know, a little can light, flash, pop it, and then made all the color on that wet rock come out. Real simple stuff, okay? Real simple stuff. That's what this whole thing about landscape is what is it that caught your eye? And most photographers, when they're out there shooting, they're gonna walk along, okay? And you're gonna sit there and all of a sudden someone's gonna catch your attention. The question is, one, what was it that caught your attention? Two, is it worth a photograph? There's a lot of things out there that shouldn't be photographed, okay? Branches, stumps, okay? I know people start out and they love twigs and branches and stuff and stumps. It's not a photograph, okay? It really isn't. But what it is it caught your attention. It's no different than the spire here in the Bodie Lighthouse in North Carolina, okay? That little bit of light on that left side, that roundness, okay, that we see from the shading, it just naturally sucks us in. We're kind of like a moth in a flame. The thing is we have to take those elements and put them into the frame, make them, you know, interesting. So in this case, if you notice everything is squared up. There's nothing leaning. I shot with a 24p CE lens, okay? So everything is square. I then took and put everything so its symmetry is all in the frame that way. And then that beam of light from the top, is it dark out? So where'd that light come from? Photoshop, okay? So all that goes through the mind when I go click. You have to think about what's the light, what's the story, what's the subject, and what do I want to say about it? You know, there's the amphitheater up in Bryce Canyon, okay, all those little hoodoos. They're shot with one of my favorite lenses, the 200 f2, okay? It's probably, I'm going to say half a mile, 3/4 of a mile away from me physically. So what f-stop did I use? I make it easy, it's handheld. I shot at f2. f2, okay? When something's a half a mile away, you think we have the technology to go f64 and pull it in focus, or better yet, close down to f1.4 and to have a little beam of focus out there? Physics doesn't work that way. When it gets so far away from you, depth of field's irrelevant. Okay, you're always fighting to make it narrower, not make it greater. So at f2, everything's gonna look in focus. And there's one trick in all of photography, no matter what your genre is, that I can pass on, that's so important that just will radically change everything. It's called underexposure. How many people shot the old days with Kodachrome? Well, at least I'm not the only old person in the room. Good, okay? Well, Kodachrome, it came 64 ASA. You put in the camera, and the first thing I always did was take my meter, and I set it to 80 ASA. ASA is what they call ISO now, just, you know. Why would I sit there and do that? It underexposed everything by a third of a stop. What happens when you underexpose? Underexposure is this miracle tool that no one seems to tap into. Because people always go, how come my pictures look so colorful? And why they always look so sharp? And I say, I underexpose. What? How does that work? Well, first of all, when you're underexposed, you saturate colors. And guess what? Works the same way with digital. You know that tone curve that used to bell curve we used to see in film? That's the tone curve in digital. Hasn't changed, same basic physics of light. So you underexpose, you instantly pump up the colors. Boom, okay, real simple. And humans love colors. So if you're aliens, probably you can ignore the next couple minutes. Humans, pay attention, okay? Next thing underexposure does. Underexposure does what? It brings out the blacks. Any black that I've already pushed over to the edge, it's gone. Well, what does that do? First of all, when you have a solid black or a solid white, not only do you have a good black and white photograph, okay, Your mind's eye has that black as a reference. And your mind's eye goes out and says, if that's black, that must be that shade of green. If that's black, that must be that shade of red. If that is black, that must be that shade of orange. And all of a sudden those colors that have just been pumped up from underexposure, now the mind sees it because of that black. That's two good things. Next thing about underexposure, what's it do? Well, you're sitting there going, how come those rocks looks like you can see every little crevice in them? And how can you see all that kind of information in that? Because those blacks, when you have that really fine line of black, the mind locks onto it. Even though it's technically not sharp, the mind sees that sharp edge of that black line and says, that is sharp. So right off the bat, if you're good at this thing called photography, you don't need no Photoshop to manipulate someone, okay? It's already done when you go click. So underexposure, you know, my camera lives basically, everybody else might have it at 0, for example. Mine's normally minus 2/3, right from the get-go. Okay, I'm underexposing minus 2/3 for most things. That's just my basic scenario. Because in this foggy morning up on Yellowstone, or on Madison River up in the Yellowstone, okay? So I have a bunch of images here, and I just want you to kind of see how I'm thinking. Here, you'll see in the very bottom, you'll see it says original. Okay, so here's the image out of the camera. Take that shot. So here it is out of Adobe Camera Raw, ACR, Adobe Camera Raw. So whether you're using Lightroom, Bridge, or Photoshop, it's the same raw engine that's processing that file, okay? Adobe Camera Raw, same math, same everything. Now from Lightroom to Photoshop, some of the sliders are not the same, okay? The UI is a little bit different, but once you find the sliders, they all do the same thing, whether you're using the fill light or the highlights or the luminance. And all this stuff, by the way, is on videos on my website, so it's not like you have to take notes. There's a video there. You can hear me drone on for the rest of your life doing these sliders you want to, you know. Just don't put on your iPhone and show me. It always wigs me out a little bit. Look, you're on my iPhone. I'm like, that's scary, okay? So, ACR. I do a lot of my processing right in Adobe Camera Raw before I go anywhere else. And you have to understand that when I take the picture, all this is going through my mind. So that's all I had to do with that shot. So here's the original. This is Upper Yosemite Falls earlier this year. May is typically the best month for the valley because all the runoff from the snow is filled all the creeks, the Merced. All those falls are just like great, you know. This particular year, we had, this year, this would have been in February, and we had a slight heating trend, and that broke loose a lot of snow, so the falls were full. You can see the waterfall over on the left, the rainbow from the waterfall on the left. So there's the original shot, but rainbows are kind of a tricky thing to do. So go into ACR, first thing I'm gonna do. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sit there and hit the black slider. Okay, it cleans up the blacks, makes up some richness, brings up that color in the waterfall. A very simple process, but you have to know when you look on the back of the LCD, it's not gonna give you everything you're seeing. You know, it's an sRGB color space, first of all, okay? We don't see in an sRGB color space. That's 256 colors, okay? We see in the 16, 18, 20 millions, we don't really know. Our color space is huge compared to 256. And those subtleties are gonna get lost between those. So you gotta sit there and think about that. When you look at that LCD in the monitor, it's sRGB color space. Right off the bat, it's not gonna give you all the colors. More importantly, it's not gonna give you all the colors you see, it's gonna give you all the colors you feel. Okay, and landscape photography is about capturing what you feel more than what you see. Here's lower Yellowstone Falls, half frozen earlier this year. The shot of the 200, 400, and then it's frozen, okay? So what color talks about something really cold? So if you notice just then, what happened? The blue just got darker. ACR, luminance, blue slider down. Now hopefully you can feel the chill. A couple miles up the road from our house, Conway Summit, beautiful place for fall color, okay? Fall color is a magical color, magical time, magical light, okay? But one of the best things about fall color is that most people don't do it very well. And that's because they're missing two things, either green or white. Okay, so with the aspens, when you start grabbing in those white trunks, by simply taking that white and make it whiter, all of a sudden, okay, all the colors get more vibrant. And that's simply going into the highlight slider in ACR, taking it up a little bit. Did I break some pixels and maybe, go to some paper white? Oops, okay. Did it hurt the image? No, okay. Do I look at histograms when I do this stuff? No. I'm looking at that photograph. I'm saying to myself, okay, here I'm up on Lake Michigan. I've got this kind of a sandy area up on Elk Beach. How can I sit there and bring that out more? Use a polarizer, start off the bat, split grad, pull down the sky a little bit so I don't have any blinkies, and then come back into post and simply what? Okay, play with my black sliders and move my blue slider and luminance to finish it up. So when I go to capture, I'm gonna sit there and use every possible trick I can when I take the picture. This is the Sierras. This is we walked there from our house. This is right behind our home in the Sierras. This is the Banner Ritter Range in the background there. Kind of a pretty day, so by itself. What happens? I just simply take the sky and make it bluer. Okay. By moving that blue slider, all of a sudden the greens get more richer and the blue gets a little bit better and the light gets a little more intense out there on Donahue Dome. Simple thing. A very simple change in Adobe Camera Raw. Now when I'm shooting my landscape work, 99% of the time I'm using the vivid color space, okay, on the camera. Now most people don't understand RAW really well. I'm not going to take time to go into it, but it's very important that those settings are put into the camera. And understand with Adobe Camera Raw, they have their own preference when it comes to the profile. They're not picking it up from the camera. That's a Adobe engineering thing. So you have to go in there and you have to actually tell it what color space. And you can use the one right out of Adobe. I tend to like the ones from the PS Kiss folks. There's a video on my site of that as well. I just like their curve better. Here's a good example. Here's the original shot outside of Maine. I don't know, it's about the name about this long, got every consonant but one vowel kind of thing. And but go to Vivid, okay, and just a simple color space, and look what happens. Now one thing that Vivid does, okay, is it pumps up the contrast. Okay, it's going to make those shadows go a little bit blacker. Well, with that black and with that green, what little fall color is there grabs your attention. Okay, so it's really, I don't want to say simple stuff because, and then I went and took it into NICS and used Tonal Contrast, okay, to pull up a little more of the subtleties and the blues that are in there to finish off that photograph. And I use a lot of NICS tools. But this whole thing about, I don't want to trivialize landscape photography to make it seem like it's really simple, because I talk to people, I know it's a challenge. But if you sit there and kind of move away a lot of the things you might have read, and that's, photographers tend to read too much of the bad stuff and none of the good stuff. That's part of the game, okay? And then you sit there and you say to yourself, what is the subject? And in landscape photography, it's one of the few times you can say the subject is, it's a feeling. It's a time and space. It's a moment when I said, I gotta hit the brakes and I gotta take a picture. What was that moment? Might not be something you can just rationally grab onto and say, it was this. But for me, in this shot here, this is a very unique place in California. It's called Coso Dunes, Coso Junction. On the other side of these mountains, piece of trivia, there is a set of hot springs that would rival what you see in Yellowstone. Back in the days, Fairbanks Jr. and Clark Gable and those guys, they had this big resort back there. And they come in the Alabama Hills, is where I'm standing right now, or just north of us. And they come there and they shoot their old black and white movies you've probably seen so much. Then they would spend their time down here in this resort. Because you ever travel up there, you go, where do those guys stay? When you're saying, well, why don't you go to that resort? Well, that's also the China Lake Naval Weapons Center back there. It's not a place that the public can just kind of cruise into and say, hey, look at these hot springs. But it's a really cool place. Since I've worked back there a lot in the Mojave Ground Squirrel, it's kind of one of my favorite places. And when I saw those clouds, okay, the whole photograph's about the feeling of the clouds and the dapple light there on the Panamints, okay, I said, I can sit there and take this shot. And literally, I just got out of the car. Sharon can tell you, I don't spend any time. I just go and I keep on going. And it's because I've been arranging these things in my mind so much, and in the viewfinder, it's really easy to do. So in this case here, boom, took the picture, came in ACR, took this blue slider, pulled it down a little bit. Then I went into NYX Color Effects, and I use the Pro Contrast. Why I use Pro Contrast? That black in the lower right corner is everything to me, okay? That small bit of black is what sets the stage for the light that goes through the mountains on the left, and takes the eye up to the highlights and brings the eye back down again. So the Pro Contrast sat there and pile that in there without breaking pixels, and then I use Dark and Light and Center. Dark and Light and Center is an amazing thing. It's another fancy way of saying vignetting, but the math in the NIC I think is the best math for doing it. Anybody know who invented dark and lightening the corners, vignetting and finishing? Anybody know? Who said Ansel Adams back there? Yes, Ansel Adams. You know, he's really one of the most famous photographic marketers on the ever. To illustrate my point real quickly out getting on that one, right? He wrote the perfect negative, the zone system, all those good things, right? So when you go out, you made the perfect exposure to make the perfect negative to make the perfect print. Everybody know that whole thing? So my question is, why do you have a microwave in his darkroom? Because he had a microwave to dry down his prints so he knew how to burn and dodge. And if you look at his book, he talks about vignetting to draw the eye in. So my question is, why did you do the zone system for the perfect negative, for the perfect processing, for the perfect print, if you're burning and dodging and doing the vignetting? That's all. Just my question. So, landscape photography has a huge tradition. You know, Ansel set the bar very high. And his romance he brought in, when you go to the places that he photographed, you look at him today, you'd say, oh, I wouldn't stop here. Okay? What got his attention? He understood light. You know, he understood light. Our good friends lived in his home in the valley for a long time. And in the living room, you looked out, you could see up Half Dome, you could see up towards Mirror Lake. You looked through the kitchen, you saw Yosemite Falls. And that's where he lived. You know, so talk about inspiration all the time to go out there and photograph landscapes. And that's really affects the way you bring it across. This is Fern Grotto in Northern California, okay? The light is everything. The magic coming through the fog. ACR, start bringing down some of the black, start taking the eye back into that canyon, and then come back and do a little bit of work with NIC, Tonal Contrast. Tonal Contrast is an amazing tool. In the current version of NIC Color Effect 4, there's a video on my site on that. They fine-tuned it a little bit more. I think they kind of push it too far, but as long as you use the fine, it gets you back to where it used to be, and it's just a marvelous tool for just doing one thing and bringing the eye to that light, that subject, that moment, that emotion. Last thing, of course, is that Dark and Light and Center. That's an incredibly important tool, as Ansel pointed out in all his books, to sit in there and bring the eye where. And you know, that's what cracks me up. That vignetting brings the eye to what part of the frame? Oops, right? So here's Stovepipe Wells, okay? That person way out there, I don't know who it was, but he stood there for a long time, bless his heart. And that gave you the scale. So sit there and take that photograph and finish it ACR, and then bring up NYX Tonal Contrast to bring out the very little subtle shades in the sand dunes and all those lines leading out to that last focal point. No, I mean, it's really hard for people starting out, and I can totally empathize with you. It's like, okay, I know all this stuff, so how do I get to be where you are? So when I go click, I go, I need to do this, this, and this, and I know that this is going to be the final result. Photoshop, as a good friend of mine would say, is the adult video game, okay? And I can do nothing but encourage you to take a shot, okay, and then go play. Because you know what happens if you don't like it? You just don't save it, okay? Just close the file and don't save anything, and you've lost nothing. The worst thing is you find the magic recipe and you forgot how you got there. Okay, that's the worst, right? How'd I get there? Okay, that's why I use layers. Layers are this great roadmap for you to backtrack and figure out what you did. So in the beginning, you might want to name that layer just as your own recipe or map to get back to how did you get that shot. So this is up in New Hampshire last fall. Okay, there's a number of problems with this shot. First of all, it's pouring rain. And I've always said it, and I always do it. Some of the worst weather produces some of the best photography, okay? It's real simple. Because when it's wet, all those colors are going to be saturated, and all those leaves are going to visibly just pop right out at you. But we got that overall diffuse bluish light. So we got to sit there and go into ACR. Okay, we're going to pump up the contrast a little bit. And we pump up the contrast, it makes the little very narrow white ribbon of water come out. And in case you didn't know, just somebody who might be new, when it comes to that quote unquote blurry or milky water, the recipe is really simple. It's simply the speed of the water versus your shutter speed. Okay? So how slow a shutter speed do you use? Blessings of the LCD, you look at it. Okay? And you sit there and you look at it and go, okay, I like that blurry effect. Whatever shutter speed that is. Half second, 10 seconds, whatever it takes. The slower the water, the longer the shutter speed to get it blurred. But here's the trick most people don't do. They take one picture and they go, okay, I'm good. So whenever I have blurry water shots I'm taking, the minimum I'm going to take is 10 frames. The minimum I'll take of that is 10 frames. Why is that? I always get ridiculed by my good friend Mr. McNally when I talk about this, because even though it's totally accurate, he just thinks it's for moose to be talking about. It's really silly. But the bottom line is we're photographing not the water, but the bubbles. That's where Joe always starts laughing. Bubble photography. My friends, what can I say? But that's what it is. We're photographing not the water, but the air content in that water. And the thing is, because it's air and it's trying to escape, it's always going to be different. You'll never be the same pattern of white in that water. That's why I shoot a minimum of 10 frames, because by the time you look at it, and if you can sit there and blur your vision to like see the final effect, then you can maybe take a picture and maybe get it. I'm not good enough. So I just hold the hammer down, let the camera take a bunch of frames, and then when I get back in the digital darkroom, I look at the frames and I go, that's the one with the pattern of light and dark, of bubbles versus non-bubble water that makes the picture I like that I put out there. So that's one of the big tricks about it, is shoot a bunch of frames. And then so here I am, I put in some contrast in ACR, make it a little bit whiter. I sat there and I put a layer mask on there and I did nothing more than brighten up that water, okay? So curves is a really great thing, so I just brought my curves. How many people are like somewhat familiar with Photoshop? Out of curiosity, people are scared to death of Photoshop. Good, you shouldn't be, okay? It's just a dumb program. Anyway, it's got a thing called curves in it. Curves is a great tool. They don't tend to break pixels, it's real gentle, so it's subtle. But here's the thing, it can teach you a lot about photography. So you open up that curves, okay, you got these big squares in there. It's called a 25% grid, all right? Again, there's another video on my website on this. Take that curve and you put your cursor in the middle. You don't touch any of the lines, put dead center. Hold down the Alt option and click there. And those 25% grid gets to a 10% grid. Why is that important? When you put the cursor dead center on that curve and you pull it diagonally up, one box, okay, that's exact same as +1 exposure compensation in the camera. Take it down diagonally, one box, that's -1. Why is that important? If you're a photographer, you should be saying, okay, this is overexposed by a stop, that's underexposed by a stop, and that way when you go into finishing, you know exactly what you need to do. It's not like rocket science. -1 here, +1 there, painting with the brush. That's what I did here. I knew the water needed to be +1, curve up, painting with the brush, boom, simple layer. Takes seconds to do. Now I should mention, I might be repeating myself, people read the blog, but if I have to spend more than 2 minutes on any image, landscape image in post, I abandon it. I screwed up somewhere, and I won't go back to fix-it mode to make it work. Because fix-it mode, okay, means you're going to lose pixel quality, and you can't make that 24x30 print. So if I can't finish in less than 2 minutes, I just kiss it off. In this shot here, I came back to Nick's tonal contrast, and then there's that one branch I couldn't stand, it had to go. That one little subtle branch that was there, it's out of here. And then of course, dark and light and center again, pull the eye down. Guarantee that's not what the camera saw when I first took a click. It's physically impossible. A camera cannot do that. It doesn't have it within its hardware or software. But it's what we saw out there. It's why we stopped. It's why we put the camera on that spot. So I'm using tools just to bring you back to what really I saw when I went click. Now, one thing I'm pretty cavalier about my landscape work anymore, a lot of things, or my aviation work, I don't worry about people in the frames anymore. I remember the horrible days. I must have sounded like a real, hey, get out of my picture! There'd be somebody back then, they'd go, God, because my voice carries across Grand Canyon, no problem. Okay? Scare somebody to death. And I did it. I was bad. I'll admit it. You know, nowadays there's that guy in the picture enjoying himself, no problem. Content-aware Phil, okay, and him and that sign, they're gone. You can go to my site. There's the Joe Tourist video where I got rid of Mr. McNally off a rock. Okay, it's not a problem anymore. So I don't even worry about people in the frame. Makes it so kind of liberating. I don't know. I don't want to say tip tool for the tulips, but you can go out and have fun, and who cares if someone's there? It really takes seconds to deal with anymore in post. And then you can, you know, there's a road there, gone, right? Fire hydrant, gone. And for it comes to arranging elements in the frame, in the old days you thought about it, you'd have to move a little bit to the left or a little bit up or down just to cut that out of the frame. And those small movements would change the photograph. I mean, I like it right here. I didn't like it over there, but over there I don't have that stuff. Well, now I'll just take it here, content-aware fill, and I'm good. So here's an old barn up in Montana, okay, the original shot. The light on the face of that barn, ooh, okay, it's luscious, okay? But the rest of the stuff, it's competing. It's taking the eye and putting it in places and then moving it right out of the frame. That one cloud takes your eye right out. You've got the hill in the background, so it's competing. It's making you sit there and work at what it is I'm doing. So ACR, do the basic cleans up, start moving things around, and then come back into neck and curves to sit there and do some more finishing. Now, tonal contrast, you'll see I use that a lot. It's a really outstanding tool for finishing, okay? If you're trying to fix things, don't do it, because it's going to give you noise, boom, on a heartbeat. Most people's images when it comes to landscape, and this comes from, you know, teaching the last 9 years, 5,000 people landscape photography. The biggest thing is most image quality starts going downhill once it hits the computer, okay? People play too much, try to fix too much, rather than look at the subtleties, okay? Little subtleties add up to big drama in the rural landscape, as long as you start with that thing called light, okay? Bridal Creek there in Yosemite, straight click right off the bat on this overcast day. This is a dangerous place. This is the, have you ever been to the valley? This is on the south side. This is the original wagon road that came in, and the Model Ts used it too, so it's that old, okay? So it's 30s. Think the road we use now is the current road, put in the 40s. Well, it ices up really bad. And this little bridge, I mean, it's not even as steep as something you might find in like Central Park, just a little, but it was so icy. There was a pile of photographers and tripods like this, you know, and we were all like grappling up the walkway. You know, I was one of them. I hit the ground too, just to get up because the shot was gorgeous because of the water. But you had to finish it. You know, you had to bring in some warmth into the shot. So right off the bat, we used a polarizer, okay? Then I went to ACR and hit the white balance and brought up a little bit of the warmth because that dark, shadowy side of the valley with that overcast sky had way too much preponderance of blue. And blue is this thing that we say, it's got to be cold, it has to be negative. Don't really want that all the time in your landscape work. So you polarize it, made it slower, got the colors come out, hit the toning. Simple little tools after, of course, what? The whole thing is arranged. I mean, through all these photographs, okay? And then the Vibrance is a marvelous slider. Vibrance does great work because it sits there and will change the colors without breaking pixels or making them look gaudy, which is what saturation tends to do. You get saturation past 25, you guys start watching breaking pixels, and that's if you're going up to 24 by 30. And that's what this whole thing is really kind of about. You gotta sit there and say, okay, what's the mind's eye looking at? Okay, light and bright. You can't help but see that water. You just no matter who you are. It's then is on this path of this light and bright you're seeing, okay, is there little gems that'll make you go, oh, that's kind of cool, or I like that, or that's visually interesting, and then bring you back again. So your eye travels through a photograph, okay? If it stays locked on one area, you're not telling a story. It's like writing a paragraph when you're supposed to be writing 3 pages, okay? You want someone to sit there and read all 3 pages to get whatever it is you're trying to say. Same with a photograph. So to emphasize a little bit more, okay, I don't want you to think for a second that, I sat there and it's been easy for me, okay? I've been doing this for 31 years. Those 31 years of surviving is one of those little things that me and my peers talk about, because in the business, you survive photography for 3 decades. means you're doing something right, okay? I mean, it's not like you're rich or famous, but at least you're still doing what your passion is, and that's photography. But those decades also added to the point where you go out and you see things, and for you it could be a struggle. For me, it's just, it is. I know what's going on there. Here's a prime example. This is the coastal redwoods up in Northern California. This is literally on the side of the road, okay? The Del Norte Grove is a gorgeous grove. You drive through it on Highway 1. There's very few places to pull over. And you can't help but driving through in the evening, and you see out and you see this incredible amphitheater of big coastal redwoods and beautiful light. You go out and you go, and this is what you get. And you go, oh crap. That ain't what I saw. It's definitely what I'm not feeling. This is like, oh crap, right? This is horrible. Well, I did this for a long time. I did it with days of film. I'd take the 15 rectilinear and I go out there, and in the very beginning, in the 15, I'd sit there and take a picture. Oh God, it's horrible, right? And then I come back, I go, the next time I go to the trip, okay, I'm gonna have another tool. I'll use a split grad. Split grad doesn't work on a 15. What happens in this scene with a split grad? You got this line going right through it. You can't help but say, yeah, you used a split grad, didn't you, dude? Okay, not so hot. So then it's like, okay, I was an industrial photography major, and one of the things we did back then was we get 11 by 14 sheet of glass, and we could put a piece of split neutral density filter on it, take our X-Acto knives out, we could cut out little patterns so we would hold back areas. That's what you did way in the old days of film to make a shot in one click. You know, we got big rigs going, and 11 by 14 piece of glass, right, that big sail, didn't work, okay? So I went for eons without getting that shot. No one did, okay? It wasn't possible with one click. Then Ben Wilmore came out with this thing called HDR. And I'm going, interesting. And HDR, just so you know, was invented in 1898, okay, back with glass plates. It's not like it's new or we've invented something. In 98, when the first Coolpix came out, we instantly started talking about how to combine exposures to increase the range of light. So it's not like new, okay? It's gone places where people who before weren't interested in photography, God bless them, now they have interest, okay? I'm not an Elvis on Velvet fan personally, but I have absolutely no problem with people doing it. If it makes them happy, hey, that's a great thing in life. I don't care what it is, okay? So this case here, what I went and did is like, how can I make this happen? Well, this is actually a 13 image HDR to sit there and get all the stops of light between the very small pinholes in the canopy to what I was really seeing. And one click, you can see the camera cannot do it. It doesn't get the color, it doesn't get the single beam of light, it doesn't get anything with a single click, no matter how I expose that frame. And realize each exposure is 5 stops, okay? But when you combine 9 of them together, how big a stop range is there in that scene? Okay? It's a lot more than one click can do. And there's the final shot. That's what I saw. This is not like something that's, you know, from imagination, from acid trips. This is what I saw driving by. It's this little beam of light on that trunk. How do you pull that out? Okay? That's the thing about landscape photography, any photography, is we chase that damn light. Okay? We romance it, we curse it, we cuddle it, we do everything we can. Simply why? We're like moths. We go to it. Okay? Now, here's the whole thing. I've been talking for an hour now about finishing and moving these looking for lights and bright sharpness and arranging all these elements. And I always say arranging elements because there's one word that's been so overused and so totally miscommunicated that I tend not to like it. But arranging elements in a frame is another word for composition. I mean, a prime example is when I say, you know, how many people heard that dead center is the worst thing to do, right? The worst composition. How many of the pictures you just see the subject was pretty damn close to center, if not center, okay? So when you think about the mind's eye, okay, and you think about light and bright, and here's a video. This is a 4-hour time lapse up in the coastal redwoods with the fog moving in and out. 4 hours. In those 4 hours, where's the photograph? There's the first thing about landscape photography I can't help but get around is you plant and you watch. Don't go out and start chasing instantly because you're probably going to miss the photograph. If nothing else, the romance of that location, what makes it unique, why do you want to do that, you're just letting it blow past you. I mean, landscape photography, any kind of photographic pursuit, the greatest reward is the one that goes home in your heart, not on the flash card. So you've got to sit there and take time to let that in. And what's the benefit of that? Vast majority of the time, okay, when you let it into your heart, the pictures are going to be better. Because now you're going to feel what you're seeing and put it in the viewfinder. Now, are there exceptions? Of course, you're photographing some plane on a ramp, and you wait for 4 hours and it takes off the first 10 minutes. You're kind of like spinning the rest of the time, right? Okay, you got some critter, you know, photographing a herd of bison, they never hold still. 4 hours from now, they're going to be gone. So, of course, there's exceptions to everything. But landscape photography, you'd be surprised, you put in some time, you'll watch the light go across that landscape, and there's going to be that one moment in that time you're going to go, that's it, and you're done. No Photoshop, no special lenses, just the element of time. So that's a very important part of what's making that photograph. So I want to spend a little time now just talking about some moments of time that I have found and what was going on, what was, you know, so you understand a little bit of the thought process. I have no clue this is going to help you. I just kind of came up with this idea, a way of showing landscape photography, teaching it a couple of weeks ago. I've been teaching this for a decade now, and I'm trying the best I can to give you all the tools so when you go out there, you're not reinventing the wheel. Okay, I want you to go out there and just have fun. When you have fun as a photographer, you win. Okay, you get the brass ring when you grab someone else's heartstrings. Okay, and when it comes to wildlife photography, I'm a firm believer that the wildlife know you're having fun, and that's why they don't care, and they'll come close to you. I've seen it over and over again. People who go out there who aren't having fun, they always get skunked. And I believe that the critters can pick that up. It's just the way the planet kind of evolves. This is down in the Smoky Mountains. It just had finished raining. The sun came out for a second, and in that second, the light just popped. It came and went. Clouds are floating by. There's an aperture in those clouds, okay? And it just came by, and that moment went, and that's when I was there. The road itself, it's kind of disgusting. So I went into Photoshop, I made it a little bit darker, okay, so it wasn't quite so bright. Otherwise, it's just right in the moment, Smoky Mountain rain. Rain again. This is the last shot was taken with a 7200 zoom. This is the Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon is an amazing place when you have clouds. When it's bald skies, it sucks dirty pond water like you wouldn't believe, okay? It's just a big hole in the ground that's ugly as sin. As soon as you get any atmosphere, oh, it just comes to life, okay? First thing people worry about when they go to and talk about probably the worst place on the planet to use HDR is the Grand Canyon. Because people go, oh, look, there's shadows down there. Fill them in. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Because what are those shadows are? Those shadows show you what? It's a big hole, right? It gives you texture, it gives you shape. You fill them in, what happens? It's a little ditch, okay? God beams, I love God beams, okay? I can't find them enough. Now, I'm not one of the guys that carry a smoke machine around, and yes, I know 2 people who carry smoke machines to do these, okay? I don't throw dirt in the air. It is what it is. I figure if the photo gods are going to give it to me, great. It's my reward for getting up early. Again, this is in the Great Smokies. Exposure here, think about it, the range of light, okay? Without that really darkness on the left, the God beams aren't going to pop out in the center. Oops, center. Okay? And then, of course, those leaves up above, got to pull it out. So the subject is really simple, okay? It's the God beams. Make them pop out, underexpose the whole thing, one stop. Simple click. Yosemite Valley from Valley View. This is the old view they have. You have spent $2 million of yours to cut a bunch of trees out and make this big ass platform so all the tourists when they show up in their bus can get out for 2 minutes, go click, and get back in the bus. And I ain't making that up, okay? This is the before that, and it's just another one of those evenings. If you haven't spent much time looking at or thinking about atmosphere and weather, if you're in landscape photography, you have to, because it's really everything. I kind of go to the extreme. Surprise, surprise. I mean, I chase tornadoes, okay? It's kind of like, if you ever want to see light, it's an amazing world to see light, you know, because we always know light's kind of directional. It starts here and it goes that way. But in a wall cloud or in a tornado, that light can go any direction at once because it bounces off all those crystals in those clouds. It's a photographic paradise. So this is, again, an atmospheric shot where the storm has come by, the fog is starting to come in the bottom of the valley. It's a real simple single click, underexposed, 2 stops. I have no hesitation underexposing. I'll go whatever it takes, okay? How do you get there? How do you get to know that? How many people have a hand? Okay, got one hand, okay? This is the greatest tool you've got. What you do is you go, take a picture of your hand. Then you take that camera, and if you say to yourself, what if? What if I underexpose, what happens? Take a picture of your hand, go to 0, -1, -2, -3, finish up, take a picture of your hand. And why do you do that? This is like your own clacker from the movies, okay? Every time you see your hand, you go, oh, in between my 2 hand shots, an experiment. It's a what if moment. What if I shot at f1.4? What would happen? Well, if you don't have 1.4 to f22, you have nothing to compare it to because your mind can't remember. You gotta realize after 20 seconds, your mind just starts moving things and just melting and making them all homogeneous. It's the way we're wired. So if you don't see differences back and forth, you won't register. You won't say, okay, next time in this scenario, I liked 1.4. So take a picture of your hand and remind you that between those hands is an experiment. And take those images and copy them to a single folder, a what if folder, and go back and look at that folder every so often, every quarter maybe, and say, oh yeah, I remember doing that. That worked. Ooh, don't like that. And that's how you start teaching yourself this thing called photography. You know, here's a rainbow shot with a 200 or 400. This is Upper Yosemite Falls. I have to think, so I say Yosemite and Yellowstone so back and forth like I shouldn't. So I have to make sure I say Yosemite Falls. And why do those colors pop out? It's because that little bit of white. If I had removed that white, the colors would be just nothing, okay? So in post, I went in and did grabbed the gray sampling tool in ACR, which is your white balance. I clicked on the white, and I got pure white there, and the rest of the colors just fell right into place. It's a no-brainer shot, other than shooting with a 200 or 400. So it means I went way back in Superintendent Meadow, which most people don't go to shoot the waterfalls, and I shot the long lens to bring it right up. Because if I go where most people go, which is the base of the waterfall, what happens? Because you're so close to it and you're looking up, the waterfall is a little sliver. The angle of incident equals angle reflection. By getting way out further with a long lens, I have a big palette of a rainbow rather than a little sliver. Oregon coast, up at the beach. Okay. I didn't have that big a bucket, but what I did do is when those waves would come in, I sat there and looked at the waves, reflections, they went out. And so I'm just doing the sandpiper thing. I'm chasing the waves back and forth, looking for one thing, that reflection in the water. Because otherwise, what is it? Sand, right? Put in some water, make it a reflection, and it's like, oh, that's kind of romantic. Okay, that's all. On the same side, though, same beach, so the shot that I just took, you can see in the lower left corner where I was standing, okay? If I stood down there for this kind of drama, though, what happens? All of a sudden, that sunset is going to be smaller and the rocks are going to be bigger, right? Because I'm shooting up the rocks for the sky. And all of a sudden, when you do that, it's not a big vista anymore. So that means the old man had to hustle his butt back up the cliff to get on top of the cliff. So now the rocks are still part of the frame, but they're not the big, massive part of the frame. The weather is, okay? So again, it's just simply moving physically and saying what's the subject. In this case, it's strictly the light. This is the, I'm trying in Bass Harbor headlight. It's not a lighthouse. Right, thank you. That's what it is. See, everybody's been there. You're not supposed to go down there anymore. It's a big sign saying no more, go there, okay? It's a really a beautiful place to go. Been there a lot. And again, it's just the light. In this case, the light in that house is red. So no beam of light coming out from that because a white beam wouldn't come from a red bulb, okay? But it comes out there. This is La Guinea Lighthouse. You know, why do they just call it Fred's Lighthouse? I don't know. Anyway, it's up on the coast of Oregon. You know, otherwise, it's just kind of this really neat structure, but without that beam of light, it's just like, So again, put it in post. This is actually the photograph that started the whole process of doing that. And of course, that beam of light, to make it work, it's got to be brighter and be feathered out. So that's still using what might be considered advanced Photoshop technique, but without understanding light and how it flares, it wouldn't look real. So you still have to be a student of light. Up in Alaska, up in the Chugach National Forest, just shooting down with a 400-2.8, just a beam of light going up the valley. Simple stuff. Again, I use the KISS theorem a lot. Keep it simple, stupid. So when it comes to the number of elements in the frame, I'm always going to say, for lack of better definitions, I'm going to minimize the number of elements in the frame. I'm going to make it simple for the mind's eye to latch onto. This is a really cool sunset in just outside Sedona, Arizona. Now those wispy clouds at the top of the frame, that was there, but I made them a little bit brighter and wispier through Photoshop by a simple curves layer and then painted them with the brush. I used the Wacom tablet on the road on my desk. I have two Cintiqs. They are not only this amazing tool for giving me time, because the bank doesn't loan time. I've tried, doesn't work. But the Cintiq gives me the ability to finish really quick anything I'm trying to do, and that speed gets me out behind the camera again. Grand Canyon, again, shot with weather, hanging out on the edge. On this particular morning, we kept looking for the place where we could actually get on the edge and not be past the sign saying don't get out on the edge, because the clouds going into the pit there is what gives that feeling of visual depth. And visual depth is a really important part of landscape photography. Visual depth, it includes a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. It has those three very distinct planes, okay? You've got the shrubs in the foreground, the clouds in the middle ground, and you got the light on north rim and a little bit of clouds in the background. Now I realize mathematically it's a two-dimensional photograph, okay? To me it's flat as a wall, it's flat as a screen, flat as a book page, okay? That flatness I'm trying to constantly beat in every one of my photographs by using that visual depth, so you feel like you're falling into it. Now besides those three physical planes, you've got other things. You've got how the light is playing, you've got the way light and bright is pulling you through and sharpness is pulling you through. So there's a lot of things that are built onto that, but the foundation is that basic foreground, middle ground, and background. And the foreground can be kind of minimal. Where the subject lives can be anywhere you want, foreground, middle ground, or background. It's all up to you. It's your photograph. That's the thing that's really important for photographers to lose sight of, especially in this day and age. Nothing personal, but too many people put pictures on Google Plus and on those Flickr groups, and they're looking for someone to say great. And it's like, unless that person who's saying great is somebody you admire, really? Does it matter? Really? I mean, bottom line is, does it make you happy? That's it. When it makes you happy, what other people say doesn't matter, unless that person you're trying to make happy is paying you for it. Then they have to be happy, okay? There's a caveat. Otherwise, man, you do it for yourself. I'm telling you, your photography just keeps rocking, just as long as you're happy with it. That's all it takes. There's Alabama Hills, shot with a 16 fish, okay? Why is the horizon not curved? Because the horizon's going where? Dead center of the frame. There it is again, dang it. So you put that horizon dead center and nothing gets bowed, except for what? That rock. It looked like a big rock that somebody should like pick a booger out of, you know, kind of thing. That's what I kind of saw at the moment. And I almost photoshopped in a booger, but I thought it would be too gross. But here's the bottom line of the photograph, okay? Where's the light coming from in this frame? Because it's pulling out 180 degrees. Where's the sun? You're not really sure, are you? Okay? Because if I'd taken a single shot and put it up here, you'd see that left-hand side of the frame would be gone. You'd see no detail there. Okay? The light, it's just like, if you're looking at your blinkies, going like this, like crazy. So how can you see the information? It's a 7-image HDR, okay? Strictly for one reason, to make sure that information over there on the west, on the left side of the frame, that's Mount Whitney, you're seeing that in the frame. That's it. Same rock. See, it doesn't look like a nose no more. Black and white. I love black and white. First awards and trophies and accolades for black and white work. I love the medium. It's very romantic. Oh, by the way, here's the rock from another side. All shot with a 16. Oops, there's a rock one more time. looks totally different. Exploring our world, okay? Now, there's no doubt that you cannot be successful without a sense of humor, okay? Whether it's you're photographing a person, a place, or a thing. In this case, this is up on Jordan Pond. It's up on Baja Harbor, okay, be correct. And to me, that one tree looks like it was out trying to reach and touch its bigger brother. So it's a 200 f2 shot. Just love that shack. It's at South Bristol up in Maine. Spent a lot of time there. It's just it's a great place to sit there and I shouldn't give out all my secrets, but one of the secrets to both wildlife and landscape photography is a bottle of Merlot and a couple hours. Okay? Sharon and I love to sit there and we'll park somewhere and we'll pull it out with a little cheese and bread and we'll just watch life go by. And guaranteed, I'm always going to get a shot in that process, always, okay? This is that kind of shot, no more, no less. This is the boathouse in Northern Carolina. For the life of me, I can't think of the name of the town. It starts with a Q. Anyway, I love architectural photography. I love when there's lots of symmetry. So this is shot, again, with a 24 PCE to make sure everything is like lined up, okay? And what I do is, I hit the info button on the back of the camera. I have a camera right here. And what I do with the info button is I'll sit there, in the very bottom corner you can see the AF sensor. And I make sure the dead center sensor is dead center. I do it here. For the life of me, I can't do it in here. I can never figure out which one, when I look at those little red lights, I can't figure out which one is dead center. So I always look there. Because then I'll take that, in this case, it was on the chimney that's dead center in the frame. And when I do that, I know everything's centered up. I don't have to really think about it. I keep that sensor on that chimney, and everything's all nice. The symmetry's all perfect because there's an equal amount of space on either side of that building. Now, hopefully, in this period of time, you look at this picture and you're like, how can we have those very subtle shadows on the front door where the sun's hitting, and you can still see the white clouds? If you didn't ask that question, I'm not getting through to you, because you gotta think things through. Okay, exposure of light, subtle shadow on the front door and white clouds. What's the range of light? It's more than 5 stops, right? Another HDR picture. Okay. Here's another one. This is another lighthouse. I know I'm in a rut, but they're great for teaching. Okay. This is up Rockport Jetty up in Maine. No, I didn't do some lighthouse tour. It's just over all the years we've made it to all the lighthouses. Okay. This shot, now you have to walk a mile out on that rock jetty to get there. Okay, it's not like you park and there you are. And the building, I just love that shape. It's just got this very kind of really cool, unique shape. And oh, I know, it's dead center in the frame again, sorry, okay? But why would you walk all the way out there when it's raining? Well, I knew something that a lot of people don't know about, is that to make a good black and white picture, I need a clean white and a clean black. Well, if it's raining, how do you get a clean white? It's real simple. It's the color sampling tool inside of ACR. And I sit there and I click on that building, and all of a sudden what's it going to do? It's going to force all those things so I have a clean white right there. And then I simply do what? I paint in the clean white in one place. I don't sit there and do a color balance for the whole photograph, just for the building. So then when I convert to black and white, guess what? It's nice and white. Okay? It's all one single click. It's just knowing some of the back-end processing that made the photograph happen. And is it one of those great shots? No, it's just one of the ones that I kind of enjoy. It was a rainy day. I had 2 choices: stay in the hotel room or go out and make some pictures. Hotel room didn't work. So I do a lot of black and white, okay? I spend a lot of time thinking about that process of, of taking those pictures. And black and white, I need something very important. What do I need? I need a clean black and I need a clean white. When I get past that part of the frame, okay, then I start saying, okay, what's starting to tell a story? Because black and white is incredibly romantic, okay? It's very romantic. And just so you know, black and white are colors. People seem to think it's not a color photography. It doesn't have the full spectrum, it has colors. And we want to think about that because those shades of gray are part of that whole process. Piece of true riparian rainforest in Hawaii, over on Kauai. Now in the process, I've done a lot of things. I mean, we started off by, you saw the video of how we're doing one of my air-to-air shoots, the aviation work. Another thing that I'm pushing, and people have asked why you're so successful in that aviation genre so quickly. Well, one of it, I kind of treat it like landscape photography. It's the same basic, you've got a subject, the plane, and you got the world around it. So to me, it's the basic same premise, okay? And then two, as you saw with that bamboo bomber, I'm always exploring or pushing this craft called photography. And for a long time, I haven't done it for a while, strictly because I've moved on. I've done what I invented and do what's called ultra-wide panos. So this is 6 different photographs assembled into making a pano. So when it's printed out, you're seeing the same thing as I saw on the edge of, in this case, Grand Canyon. So it has the same degree on the sides, 120 and 94 vertical, as your peripheral vision. So you see this, and some people will buy them, and they actually curve them on their wall. So you look at it, it's exact same as I saw standing there from all my vision. And I do it with either a 24, a 45, or 85 PCE lens. All that video and trivia is on my website, as well as my ranting and raving and showing and doing when assembling it on Kelby Training. But this is like the Grand Canyon, Alabama Hills. And the thing is, when I do these, I don't do panos just because I can. I never find that to be a really good reason for anything in photography. But it's a chase of lights. There's Mount Whitney, it's got kissed a bit of light. You've got a little bit of the road. This is Alabama Hills. This is right next to the set for Gunga Din. And so it's the light and all the different frames to make it happen. So in my own personal recipe, this is 6 photographs. And when I sit there and decide I'm going to go through all this pain, I always say it's at least 3 individual images strong enough to stand alone as a photograph before I sit there and make a pano. A lot of panos out there that just sometimes they're missing things, and part of that is because I wasn't there, part of the experience, so I don't have the emotional attachment. So some of these are important to me. That's my backyard. The sun is setting at our house up there in the Sierras, and this is our favorite fishing hole. Is it a killer shot? No, but technically, this is what would it be? It's 30 frames because it's an HDR panel put together. Cotton grass up in Alaska Range. Cotton grass is really cool stuff. When you catch it, it's a little bit bigger than a quarter, and it's circular, and it's as soft as can be. It's actually a flower head to a marsh plant. And there's actually landscapes right here. I'm always surprised. I've done a number of photo walks over the years, like in Central Park, how many locals don't even go there with a camera, let alone look at, to me, you've got these incredible canyons, you've got mountains, you've got all this great stuff here, but it just happens to be man-made. I love architecture, and of course, what am I doing? I'm just chasing light, no more, no less. And I find it really cool, kind of satisfying. I put up some shots today on my blog from last night, hanging out the 22nd floor window of our hotel room, shooting strictly what? The clouds going by Empire and the light. That's all it is. I just love doing it though. It's Chamber Street Station. That tile floor, I could be there forever shooting up on that. That's just an amazing mosaic out there. Just love it. The bridge has been very good to me. It's a money maker. Whether I do the black and white or the color, shoot it straight on, I enjoy it. One of our favorite places is to go hang out in front of, that building there, the Flatiron. We love sitting at those tables and watching people. I think it's hilarious. And I spend a lot of time, I don't put them out there, photographing people, photographing stuff. Because, watching the people's techniques and what they do just crack me up, And it's just amazing stuff. One thing I'm going to try again and again is if you look at like the taxi in the right corner and some stuff, you'll see there's actually a one-legged person. This is all HDR. And what I'm trying to do is that at high noon, I want everything blurry as far as the vehicles and stuff to show what's going on. But I want all the detail and shadows and highlights. So I've been trying with HDR to do it. The problem is the software is actually so good that it doesn't allow much ghosting anymore. But I'll be back trying that again just to show that blur of life in this big giant canyon. And it's landscape photography. It's all it is. It's just this is from a couple years ago. I'm in the same room. They're really nice. You know, we requested the room again, and I get there, and the screw's out the window, so it opens all the way, and the screen's gone. I love these people. You know, it's real easy to do. But it's just chasing light. It's just what landscape photography is all about, and color, and knowing that the mind goes to light and bright, and you sit there and you're going to put that into the frame, and it's important. You say, okay, you look at your blinkies, and it's going blinking at you. You say, okay, is that taking the eye away from the subject? Then I got to do something about that blinky. Or is that bringing the eye to the subject? Then I don't want to do anything about that blinky, because I want you to come there. And once you ask that question, you go, okay, where's the sharpness? Because that's the second place the eye is going to go. Okay, is the sharpness, do I want it on the entire building or just a part of it? 1.4 or f22? You ask those questions, the answers are right there for you. But you've got to ask the questions. And then you just keep building onto that and building onto that. This is a shot with a 16. So you shot with a 16 and you see all those clouds on the right, okay, and then you can see detail in them, and the stuff on the left, you know what about the frame? It's got to be HDR. There's the only way you can do that. Otherwise, what? All those archers are going to be lost in shadow, okay? It's just what? That's just no more than knowing light, okay? You just got to chase the light. And I like to get out and shoot with a lot of long lenses and just look at the play of light on the many different planes that are on the sides of buildings. This is from Brooklyn Bridge looking, what would it be, southwest. I have no idea where that is, somewhere up there, okay? Colors, shape, and it's not a flash, that's just a reflection of the aluminum tables bouncing light up into the umbrella. And that light just caught my attention. I'm like, no problem. Our favorite place to sit there and watch live. We had a great time when they had all those sniper statues around that square. That was a couple of years ago now. I don't know if you guys saw that art exhibit. We're sitting there drinking our coffee and go, there's a sniper up there. I don't know if you guys saw that. And then all around the buildings, and then there's one guy that was naked there, so everybody could see what he looked like in real life. All the women loved to take a picture with him. That was fun. That was hilarious. Watching it, and the guy and the women would grab his butt and stuff. It was hilarious. And then they read the sign, and it was like everybody did the same thing. They read the sign, and they go, and they start looking around, and they start pointing. It was great entertainment, let me tell you. This is from Hoboken, shooting across the 600, okay? And what is it? It's just sunset. It's just the lights coming on the Chrysler building. But it's a landscape shot. It's straight landscape 101, just that it's not rocks and trees, okay? It's just light and how it's playing on our world. It's a great place to shoot. That's why I have the camera, and I travel throughout the island here with the camera on my shoulder. This time I have out the 51.4 and 24.14, just those two lenses. Make it simple, keep it easy, but it's just a play of light. That's where you guys call home. Kind of a cool place. Love visiting here, not moving. Shapes and color. This place has got lots of it. And of course, when you're across from Hoboken and you've got the lights come on, you can't help but shoot the whole skyline as a pano. So this is a 3-image pano with a 600. And with Photoshop nowadays, really easy to merge them. It's not like it was just 5 years ago. This is no-brainer stuff anymore. Take a picture of your hand, shoot the pano, take a picture of your hand, go back and assemble. Real easy stuff. And that's how landscape photography should be. Now, in all my 30 years of traveling, I've only had one moment in my 30 years where I was just so blown away that there was no way on this planet. And I had a bunch of my good friends there with me that you could bring that back photographically. And that happens. Not very often, but it happens. This is up in the Bridgers up in Montana. And McNally was there with me and a couple other people. And it was a morning where no matter what we tried, as the light came up and the clouds moved around, we went through fog and snow on the other side of the pass to get here. It was probably close to -5. It's just a really nippy morning. And the light just played its magic. And no matter what you tried, what lens, where you got. There was nothing that was going to bring that day on and capture you the same way. Those are the kind of moments I still chase. Getting skunked like that, it's a good skunk, okay? It's a good skunk, but if you don't get out, you'll never even get close. And that's the whole thing. You just got to get out. You can do it with an iPhone. You can do it with the most expensive Nikon or Canon. Doesn't matter. You just got to get out there and try. But unlike wildlife, I rarely get skunked. The message isn't going to come down from the heavens, though, and strike you in the head, okay? You've got to get out there and just put it your right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. You just got to get out there and do it, and you'd be surprised what will happen. So I don't want you going away dejected that I didn't give you the magic key to the landscape world, okay? There you can't. If I could give you the blessing of time, I would, okay? You've got to go out and see it for yourself. And then feel it, bring it back. It is about this thing called time. No f-stops, no shutter speed, time. Anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
How do you do the lighthouse beam of light?
How do I do the lighthouse beam of light? You go to moosepeterson.com and use a search engine, which no one tends to like, and type in lighthouse beam. And the whole recipe is right there, step by step. I don't have any secrets. That's why there's about 3,000 free pages of information on my website. I really rather you not spend your time reinventing the wheel. I want you out there not only taking those pictures, but sharing them. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, what I put in the search on your website to find out how to set my camera to the different HDR, like photos.
There's a video on how on HDR, and it's all right there. Photomatic Pro video in the video library. Photomatic Pro is the program. Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes, sir.
You said you print 24 by 30.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't quite match the sensor size.
Question is the 24 by 30 doesn't quite match the sensor size. That's because I don't bleed it, or I just say, for example, on a 24 by 30 piece of paper, the longest edge that I'm going to print on is 26. Okay, so I say this Photoshop, this side is 26, and it just does the rest of the number itself, 17.14111, and I print it. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Do you usually handhold or do your HDRs on a tripod?
Do I usually handhold or do I tripod my HDR? Vast majority of the time, it's all handheld. I do not do a tripod. I hate tripods. You know, they get in the way. It's one more thing to carry. Yuck, yuck, yuck. You know, the 600 f4. If I'm going to park somewhere for quite a while, I have a tripod because this gets really old. You know, for 4 hours. Otherwise, yeah, a tripod gets left at home. Yes, sir.
The HDR Panos, how do you assemble those?
The HDR Panos, how do I assemble them? There's a video on my website on that, and then Kelby Training has got the most current version because I use that incorporates CS5. But basically, there's going to be 6 sets of HDR. So I assemble those in Photomatic Pro, and then those 6 images from that get assembled through Photoshop.
So you do the HDRs first and then?
My technique is I do the HDRs first, and then I assemble the pano. Yeah, I let Photoshop worry about matching the colors in the blue sky, which the sky is the worst part. You know, that's where you can see any screw up in the blues. You'll see it in the sky. So I let Photoshop deal with that headache. Yes, sir, in the back.
You talked about Wacom tablets, and you mentioned a Cintiq. Is that one of the Wacom, a big Wacom or something?
Don't say Wacom or Wacom. Gets really mad. Okay, it's Wacom. Don't ask me where it came from either. The Wacom Cintiq is your pen tablet you're used to, but it's also a color calibrated monitor. The 24 HD is out there now, and so you put the pin right on there, and it's just like following the numbers. It's really fast and easy. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Do you use manual exposure?
Do I use manual exposure? Do I look like a manual exposure kind of guy? I'm an Aperture Priority, okay? And I use matrix metering religiously. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing to me, people, you spent thousands of dollars in this technology and you turn it off. I've never figured that out. I've never figured out. I was like, why don't you just go back to Kodak Brownie? That, you know, first of all, aperture priority, okay? Why am I using aperture priority? Because I want to be in control of the depth of field. Does that make sense to start first? Okay. Next, when you're in aperture priority, did you know your camera is in stepless shutter speed mode? Okay. So you're used to those numbers, 60, 125, 250. The camera doesn't know what those are. It's going to use 142, 263. It's going to use a very precise shutter speed. Okay, this is going to match it up. Not only is that more precise than we can manually dial in, it's a lot faster. Lastly, in my own personal way when it comes to exposure, to me exposure equals emotion. So I expose to bring out the emotion in the photograph, not any technical black and white, okay? So if I want more mood in that light, I underexpose, and I go down no problem. Okay, if I want it to be more high noon, I go up. I don't even think about it. So when I walk out, okay, seriously, camera is all set to null. Okay, it is all set down to null. So the underexposure, like it is right now, okay, minus 2/3. So when I'm walking to a scene, I know that I hold down this button, I can click it like this, and I know I'm back at 0 without looking at it. Go back to this and minus 2/3. Two more, minus 1 1/3. So my exposure compensation, I'm dialing it in as I walk to the scene. I'm not even waiting to put this up here. Okay. That's what you get after 30 years of doing this. It's one of those benefits, you could say, okay, is knowing that. So aperture priority, I'm always going to have the lens all the way wide open when I walk out somewhere. So I know it's going to be at 1.4, 2.8, or f4. So before I even put the camera in my eye, I've set the exposure compensation and I've set the depth of field. When you're working with wildlife, which is everything I've come to and based on is on my wildlife experience. That means when the camera goes up, I'm ready to shoot. So the critter's moving, I'm going. And that speed, that split second, makes difference in wildlife between getting it and not getting it. Landscape's not so important. I've not scared a rock yet, but I bet I will at some point. Yes, sir?
Use aperture priority for the wildlife also?
Aperture priority on everything except for aircraft in the air. Then I go shutter speed priority. Otherwise, it's aperture on everything.
Even when you're using flash?
Everything. Do you want to give me another even ors? Yes, sir?
Also, they use auto white balance.
Auto white balance. I'm shooting with the D3 family. It's probably one of the better auto white balance cameras out there, but do I use it all the time? No, auto white balance I change. For example, if I'm shooting a sunrise or sunset, yuck. I'm going to go to cloudy. And I've since day one, I've always hated those terms. Anybody ever wonder where we got the cloudy and the little house symbol, all that stuff came from? That's back in the days of VHS video cameras, okay? So they never decided to move past that terminology because cloudy actually means 6,000 Kelvin, okay? So I go to cloudy because I'm going to 6,000 Kelvin, and that gives me a better sunrise or sunset, color-wise. Auto white balance is going to try to neutralize that red. And why would I want to try to neutralize something I got up really early to go see? So I'm going to go to 6,000 Kelvin. So that's one of the exceptions. Yes, sir?
How about the active D-lighting?
Active D-lighting, that's junk. I don't use it. Yeah. It's another lame. Here's my problem, okay? I could take out my iPhone, okay, and I can use my $1.99 True HDR app in this thing, and it rocks. You know, I showed it to Kelby when he was in New York because he hadn't seen it. It's a couple years old. And he blogged about it. He was talking on Photoshop User TV. He went crazy because this little camera with True HDR knocks it out of the park every time. And I go to Nikon, I go, here's my 10,000 D3X. Why can't it do this? Okay? So active D-lighting is a really lame approach of trying to get there. And I'm not sure what the problem is. Yes, sir?
Well, you say you crop within, in camera.
Mm-hmm.
But like when I usually go home and put it on the big screen, I usually find things in there that I couldn't see in the viewfinder.
Whose fault is that?
How do you deal with that? I mean,
a valid question. First of all, the question is, I'm sitting there going and looking at in the viewfinder, and then I get back home and I see stuff in the print that I didn't see through the viewfinder. How do you get past that? Well, a couple things. The first and foremost is the fact that If you're shooting with like a D300 or a 5D, something that doesn't have 100% viewing, you can't see it because it's not in the viewfinder. The camera doesn't give you the full view, okay? If you go and you become a real chimpmeister, okay, then you spend your time looking at the edge of the frame instead of what the subject is, and that's not a good habit either. So from the day one when I started shooting film, because there was no option back then, whenever you have the luxury of time, you look at the subject, then you always do a total 360 on the edge of the viewfinder, and you look at those edges, and you always do that. That's an old habit. Yeah, a lot of things that I do now are such old habits, I have to really think about where that even came from in the beginning, and that one there is because I got burnt. With film, you'd have in the frame. Yes, sir?
What's wrong with cropping?
What's that?
What's wrong with cropping?
What's wrong with cropping? Not one thing. Not one thing with cropping is wrong with it. Problem is, you understand where I'm in the business of photography, okay? And I'm sending my images to a client. And that client has to have, one, has to like the picture. Two, the client's usually never the boss. It's someone below the boss. The boss has to be made happy, okay? So in the very beginning, for example, with digital, okay, you can Google my name, you'll see where I was called a heretic because I was going to be the death of photography because I was promoting digital. And the problem is, especially back in the days when first digital came out, you cropped it. A lot of people did, especially with what, you remember electronic file? The electronic file was the name for when you took your slide and you scanned it, okay, for about 4 or 5 years in the 90s. And people could scan it, and then they could do horrible things in Photoshop, and they'd sell it to a client, and then they try to print it, and it'd fall apart. And so you have this very expensive magazine with this photograph that looked like crap. And the boss would go, why do I have crap, okay? So in the very beginning, especially, a lot of people would say, especially if you're new, they go, did you crop it? Because you crop a digital file back in the day, it'd fall apart. My reputation's been since day one, especially because they had the film, they saw what I shot, and they knew that was it. So it's a simple moniker of craftsmanship, okay? A photographer in the day with film, be 4x5 or 35, they saw exactly what you shot. They saw what you thought, they saw what you felt. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it, no question about was this manipulated, okay? The only reason why we made it in a business and digital became successful is because a number of us pioneers held that same moniker of quality. So not cropping is a moniker of quality in my game. But is there anything wrong with it? No. You could shoot everything with sticks and stumps and bad exposure and cropping to your heart's content. If it makes you happy, who am I to say anything? Who is anybody? It's what it's meant to be, right? I guarantee though in a year from now, you'll go back and you look at the picture and you'll go, God, what was I thinking? And you guys laugh because what? You've been there. Okay? It's just life.
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.